It's Remark here, and you know, it's hard to believe, but it's 30 years since I've actually been actively DJing, and throughout the course of my career I've gotten different questions and people reaching out through social media or of course commenting on my podcasts, and then sometimes questions come up just asking about my history, what equipment that I use, and of course my style or what my creative process is. So as a 30-year kind of anniversary tribute, I thought I would take the time to walk you through my creative process, explain a little bit about my history, and yeah, just give you a little bit of background about my career and what makes me so excited about DJing. Well, like I mentioned a moment ago, it's actually been 30 years since I've been DJing, but before that, I was actually buying records since I was 7 years old and always had a strong passion for dance music and remixes and had a collection, you know, that was pretty massive by the time that I got to my teenage years. And then in the 1980s, I got into going out to clubs, and fortunately in Orlando we had a really great club that focused on new wave music and industrial music, and it was called Visage, and I had the opportunity to start playing there. And my first gig, I think, was in 1988 or so. I was still, you know, a young teen and just really excited about music. And then that continued to evolve into the 1990s when the Orlando house music scene really took off, and my DJ career also exploded, and I was able to play out in all the major clubs in Orlando, Icon, Firestone, Renaissance, as well as many different gigs all over the United States. I had the fortune of also working at a record shop, so I managed a record store called Underground Record Source, and so always had the latest and greatest music always around, which was great. And then my radio show, which was on Saturday nights, college radio, WPRK, for those of you from the Orlando area, my show was called Remarkable, and for over 10 years I was rocking the airwaves and played the latest dance music every Saturday night. So I feel very fortunate to have been part of the scene during those great, great years. Many great artists have influenced me throughout the years. Arguably the biggest impact has been from the Pet Shop Boys. If you know me at all, you'll know that I'm a massive, massive fan, as evidenced by the gallery of images behind me. But ever since the 1980s, you know, they really, to me, were pioneers of electronic music, and they've continued to push boundaries over those years and stayed so consistent and true to their dance floor roots, you know, using just a significant amount of DJs and remixers, which was always incredible. I also was inspired by Depeche Mode in the 1980s, and of course New Order and their remixers as well. And then over time, as we moved into the 1990s, DJ culture really took over for me in terms of inspiration. And I was influenced by you know, Sasha, John Digweed, Paul Van Dyke, Paul Oakenfold, Quiver, and some of those have continued through to this day. I absolutely love listening to those sets for those DJs, and I'm really impressed by how they've continued to keep at it. Dave Seaman is another great influence, Way Out West, and some of these artists are just still putting out incredible music to this day. So I love following all these DJs on various social media and seeing kind of how they're impacting dance floors, and then also listening to who's impacting and influencing them as well, as, you know, the new school generation of great talent continues to move forward. And I would be amiss if I didn't give credit to the Orlando DJs that have also impacted me. You know, Robbie Clark was my biggest mentor throughout my career, and he's still doing some incredible stuff too. So yeah, I really have a wide range of influences and feel really honored to consider those guys to be people that have impacted me. My sound in the 1990s was known for being really uplifting, energetic, vocal, four on the floor, prime time kind of part of the night music. And although I still have a strong passion for that, as the years progressed, I think I've taken more of a darker turn, kind of more of a deeper, intelligent tech house kind of sound. I now have a passion for songs and tracks that are more mental, a little bit more cerebral, and deeper in their intention. Still love vocals though. Actually, one of my biggest criticisms of progressive and tech these days is that we've gotten away from some really, really quality vocals. I really like to be able to intermix vocals throughout a mix, especially if it's, you know, just a few tracks that really adds a nice color to the overall sound. But yeah, so I'd say that's really what my sound is these days. But if I look back, historically, I think people recognize that my sound is always really, really driving energy, tends to be uplifting, and something that really wants to make you move. And I have continued to try to push that boundary, even if the sound has a little bit of a darker tone these days, just to keep people really motivated and emotional in the groove. So, what is my creative process? Well, it's quite involved these days, actually. So, I'm very, very picky about the music that I ultimately put on any of my mixes. And so, when I'm kind of collecting music, so to speak, I listen to tracks over and over again and almost think of them as being individual colors in a painting, if you will. And I listen to them over and over again so that I can get a feel of the vibe and a feel of how it's all going to start to fit together to tell a story. And so after I've decided on the songs that I feel have this feeling or this emotion, I then will start to organize them in a playlist, the whole while wanting to tell a story or take the listener on an oral journey, if you will. And so that process can take weeks, it can take months, and in some cases even years, because I'm constantly bringing in some new tracks, removing some old ones. I sometimes tap into the archives, rearrange things, and ultimately, when the track list is final, which again takes a really long time, I'm really, really proud of the experience. And so over time, especially after we were able to break free from the 80-minute CD limitation, you remember CDs used to have the time of like 80 minutes, I've been able to now take that to an entirely new level with podcasts and with kind of streaming services to be able to go 2-3 hour journeys. I'd say that my average mix now is about 3 hours in length. And the idea is that as a listener, you're basically starting on a journey and you go through an entire experience. I love telling a story through the music and really want you to completely get consumed and let it take you from start to finish. I know many DJs, especially the EDM scene these days, it's all about in-your-face kind of, music just really to get you motivated, and then it's kind of like you wash your hands and done with it. But with my music, I really want it to get under your skin, have these layers, and really just inspire you as well. So hopefully you get that from my mixes. Every single mix, regardless of the sound, has that same approach. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to like this more cerebral, techie music these days, because it tends to lend itself more to that kind of experience. Well, for years, I was a turntable purist and, of course, have a massive record collection, which I still love to this day. Lots of sentimental value, as you can imagine. As we moved out of the vinyl era into the digital space, I originally got involved with using Serato, Scratch Live, which, for those of you in the know, kind of mixes the idea of mixing vinyl with digital, and it's a really cool concept, and I think it was maybe the late 2000s I got really involved in doing that. And then time progressed and I shifted most of my equipment over to Tractor, which is what I use these days. And this really frees me up to not worry about the equipment, but instead focus on the story I'm trying to tell. I really like the effects on it. I like how it's got the mixer built in my Control S4 here. I still use turntables on occasion, and so that's really my current setup. I know many DJs out there use CDJs. Some of them even gone back to using vinyl exclusively. That tends to have a resurgence in some of the clubs. But for me, I really enjoy this setup, and it works really well for me. In the 1990s, I was playing all over Orlando and had many gigs as well, and as I mentioned, all over the United States, to be honest. And in the 2000s, I had relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, and ended up playing also out in many of the clubs there too. But in 2011, I took a big leap of faith and actually moved to London, which is where I live now. And I have to say that I haven't really pursued playing out so much anymore. I mean, the opportunity does surface on occasion, but I'm much more inspired by putting out music on my podcast or through streaming services. So if you want to check out my tunes and my mixes these days, you can search for the Remarkable Podcast in iTunes, or you can go to SoundCloud or Mixcloud and look for Remark or Remark Central, and you'll find my my mixes. So yeah, those are really the main ways that I push out music these days, and it's so great to be able to have people hear my stuff, you know, wherever they are in the world. I love having an international fan base now, which is kind of different than what it was in the 1990s, and it's just great to hear from so many people from around the world and how my music is continuing to impact them. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. Hope you learned a lot about my background, my influences, and my sound. If you still want to learn more, you can go check out my dedicated DJ page, REMARKCENTRAL.INFO/sound. And on that page, there's a history of my DJing experience. There's an entire library and catalog of all my mixes to date, all the links to the various media sites that I'm on, as well as a YouTube video called Remarkable, the Story of the Orlando Curfew, which documents the Orlando nightlife club scene in the late 1990s. Definitely worth a view if you want to learn more. So go check it out, and thanks for watching.